Hello, my name's Ben. I've been working at the Edinburgh Bicycle Cooperative shop in Bruntsfield in Edinburgh since 2012. Today we're going to have a look at a few ways that you can armour and protect your bike to help increase its lifespan, to sustain its value and to make it easier to maintain. We've got a few products to help with that. So we've got a selection of sprays and polishes here, a selection of different styles of mudguard, and a few things that you can add on to the bike to stop it from getting chipped or to stop cables from rubbing on the frame. We've got a selection of sprays and polishes here. So there's a few different frame protection sprays. We've got a couple here from a company called Red Ant, and they do a few different versions of this depending on the type of frame that you have. So they'll do different versions for carbon frames, titanium frames, and different versions for matte finishes and gloss finishes. We've also got a general purpose one from a company called Finish Line, which works in much the same way. So with all of these, what we're going to be doing is basically spraying them onto the frame, giving them a little kind of rub in, and then allowing them to dry and then essentially kind of polishing them back out again. The idea there is that all of these are going to leave a bit of a film on the surface of the frame, which is going to repel water and dirt in the future, and it's also going to keep it looking shiny and new. The next thing we have is GT85, which is a fairly common sort of general purpose lubricant, quite handy for getting sort of seized parts freed up and everything. And the other use it has here is on the inside of your frame as well. So especially for steel frames, what you can find is that water gets inside the tubes of the frame and sits there and causes a little bit of rust. So you can get sort of specific products for this, but in a pinch, GT85 works quite well. You can spray that inside the tubes, and that'll just basically displace the water that's in there and prevent any rust. And the last thing that we have here as well is copper grease. So copper grease is essentially designed to stop metals from seizing together. So that has a lot of uses all over the bike. The most common ones are basically any sort of threaded components. So if you have a look at things like where the pedals thread into the cranks here, where the bottom bracket threads into the frame, or any other general threads, so for example bolts for mudguards and for racks and things like that, you can apply a little bit of copper grease to the threads there and that will just stop them from seizing together. Helps the bolts to come out more easily in the future. The other use that has is for seat posts inside, especially steel frames, where you'll tend to find that the aluminium and the steel can seize together. So if we pop a little bit of copper grease on there as well, that will also help it to stop it seizing, basically makes it more easy to get out in the future. Okay, so secondly we've got a selection of mudguards from a few different companies. We've got a couple of different styles of mudguard from a company called Crud just here, a pair of mudguards from SKS, and a selection of Savers as well. So these will work in different ways, and it largely depends on the style of the bike that you have. So the Crud mudguards here, you basically have a pair of front and rear mudguards, and these are designed sort of primarily for mountain bikes or for off-road use. They tend to sit quite a long way from the wheel, which gives you plenty of clearance for mud and things like that, and will basically just bolt onto the frame. So you have a rear one which bolts onto the seat post and sits out over the back wheel there, and a front one which will either sort of zip tie on or bolt on just underneath the frame there and sits over the front wheel. So these are really good, as I say, if you need a lightweight mudguard. It's easy to take on and off, and that has plenty of mud clearance. The second set of mudguards we have here are called the Crud road racers, and these are basically designed for road bikes that don't have very much clearance for a wide tyre or space for a bigger mudguard. So they're perfect for sort of road racing frames. And those basically will attach on and sit around the tyre, but only really good if you have, as I say, a narrow road racing tyre. The SKS Mudguards are really the classic in terms of kind of touring use or commuting use, and these are basically made of sort of plastic with a layer of aluminium through the middle, and these will basically just sit, again, sort of around the wheel. It sits through the frame like this. Okay, that's going to give you loads of protection, so they work really well in terms of keeping you clean and keeping the bike clean, and they're a very robust, sturdy design. They tend not to rattle as much as some of their competitors, so those are really good for commuting and things like that. The other thing we've got is a selection of Savers. So these are very, very minimal mudguard. They come in a few different shapes for different saddles and things like that. And they're essentially just designed to slot in underneath your saddle. It doesn't really protect the bike, but it does protect you from the worst of the spray coming up from the back wheel. It stops that going from all up your back. These can be folded away underneath the saddle when you're not using them, and you can just cut them to shape if you need to. So that's a really good kind of lightweight minimal mudguard as well. Okay, we've also got a couple of products from Endura and from Alien Skin here, just designed to protect your frame from any kind of chips or from cables rubbing on the frame. So the first thing is Endura do Chainstay guards, and these are essentially a neoprene strip, much like a wetsuit, with Velcro on each side. These come in different sizes, depending on what bike you're fitting them to, but essentially they'll wrap around the chainstay, which is this tube of your bike just here. The idea with those is that as you're going over rough ground, if the chain's kind of bouncing around, you're not going to allow it to chip the frame just here and damage the paintwork. So those are quite helpful for that. They're quite common on mountain bikes and generally, bikes that you're using off-road. And the other thing is the Alien Skinz sticker kit here. So these are essentially a set of clear stickers, and they're basically designed to stick onto the frame to sit in between any sort of cables or hoses or anything that might be rubbing on the frame. Genesis have designed this bike quite well, and there's not too many points that this is an issue. But quite often around the head tube you'll find that you'll get cables rubbing against the frame, and here we've got a hydraulic hose running down the outside of the head tube, which is just sat against there, and it's also sat against the bottom of the seat tube here. And we've also got a gear cable here, which is again sitting against the frame. And especially around the head tube where the handlebars move a lot, you'll tend to see a lot of rubbing and it'll just wear the frame away. So what we can do with these is essentially just take a small sticker there, and just stick that onto the frame, just in between the frame and the cables, just to stop anything from rubbing. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope the video has been helpful. If there's something that we missed out that you want to know about, or if there's techniques that you use that we haven't mentioned, please feel free to leave a comment underneath this video.